Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life. I'm your host, Lori Palau, and I am loving this series on the Clutter Clinic. I hope you are as well. I'm super excited to talk about one of my favorite spaces today, which is kitchens. Fun fact, it's my favorite space in the house to organize, in case you didn't know that. But before we get into today's episode, I just want to remind you about an amazing workshop that you can access for free on demand from my friend Kara Harvey at A Purpose Driven Mom podcast. So, Kara was on our show back in episode 222. We were talking all about productivity tips for moms. That's what she does. She's all about helping moms stay organized with their schedules. And she's got a whole system that she's created. And she uses Trello as her go to platform. And so which is not anything that I am well versed in at all. So she has created this 1 hour digital free workshop for all of you out there. So all you have to do to access this, if you're interested in checking it out, and I highly recommend you do because Kara is filled with tons of really great content, is go to a purposedrivenmom.com/Lori, that's Laurie, and you can download it and it comes with all kinds of free resources and it's really great. So do that after you're done listening to this. And you can also follow her on Instagram at Purpose Driven Mom and listen to her show, Purpose Driven Mom Podcast. Okay, now we're back to Clutter Clinic Kitchens. So, for those of you who might be tuning in for the first time, Clutter Clinic is a speaker series that I created in 2013. It was a way for me to connect with folks who were looking for strategies in an in-person way where I could do Q&A. And this is like before people were using Zoom and we were doing virtual stuff. It was like, how could you get direct one-on-one information from an expert if you weren't going to hire them as a private consultant? And there really wasn't a place from an organization standpoint. You could go on YouTube, you could read a book, you could read a blog, all the things, but there was no way that you could like go in and just ask questions and get answers. So I developed an in-person speaker series where we talked all about clutter in different parts of the house. It was super popular. I created a sort of a generic one, which I call Clutter Clinic Classic. Say that 10 times fast. And from that, it just spiraled into Clutter Clinic closets, Clutter Clinic playrooms, Clutter Clinic garage, and of course, Clutter Clinic kitchens. So today I'm bringing this to you from a podcast perspective. I know you're not available to ask your questions in person, but the beauty of our world today is you can connect with me on social media. You can post your questions in this Organized Life podcast group. You can shoot me a message on DM on Instagram. We are here and very interested in helping you with any of your clutter issues. And if you are looking for a professional to help you in your home with you, we have a ton of resources in terms of live humans through our SBO partner program, which is our curated network of experts. They are all over the globe in various cities and countries that are here and willing and able and skilled and talented to help you get organized, remove that overwhelm, remove that feeling of, I don't even know what to do or where to start. This is what these people were built for. And we are bringing them to you. So, since I can't be in your house with you, between this content and our SBO partners, you're in good hands. So, let's get started talking about kitchens. So, a few statistics, because if you listen to the other episodes in this series, I always like to start with some facts. So, kitchens are, to no surprise, the most popular room in the house. That is statistically cited by ranker.com in 2019. And again, we're always looking from resale perspectives, talking to realtors and agents all over, and an updated and wait for it, functional kitchen is one of the top features cited for people looking to buy or rent a home. So again, it doesn't just have to be updated, it has to be functional. So again, I know for myself, a functional kitchen is really important. And what does that mean? What does a functional kitchen mean? It means that it's going to have ample storage. It means that the layout is going to be efficient. So you don't have to have a large kitchen for it to be functional. And on the flip side, I've been in many very large, like over the top kitchens that are not functional. So the beauty of it is, even if you don't have $1 million, even if you don't have a big space, you can still have a functional kitchen. And we're going to talk about that. So, next thing I want to talk about before we get into the actual tactical, practical stuff is to look at why. Why are kitchens so challenging for us to keep organized? Well, the first thing is they are the room in the house that is most commonly used by everybody. I mean, you think about, a closet or a bedroom, they're used by certain people, but a kitchen is like the heavy duty room of the house. It does a lot of the heavy lifting. And so when you think about the multiple uses, it is you've got meals, you've got bill paying, you've got a homework hub, you've got a lot of times a home office. Um, During COVID, we had kids that were using the kitchen as their school spaces, their education spaces. So when you think about all of the things a kitchen does and has to do, it could be arts and crafts. I mean, so many things. How we use our kitchen and how we can multi-purpose and transform our kitchen so it can fluidly move from one space to another is something that um, not everybody has really thought through, but they're just kind of like living moment by moment. So, my goal today is to really help you be intentional about saying, okay, we know it has to do this. These are the spaces that we need to account for. The other thing is that the kitchen for a lot of people is difficult because there are defined things that are already structures that are already there, whether that's cabinetry or appliances. So we don't have as much flexibility to move things around the way that we would in, say, a playroom or a bedroom or a living space because you can move all of your furniture around. There are some limitations that we're going to have in a kitchen just based on the fact of the footprint that you're dealing with. So we have to work within that. Again, that doesn't mean that we're destined to have it be disorganized, but we have to lean into the space that we have. So unless you're planning on doing like a gut renovation, and then that's a whole other conversation where you can really talk about what is the best way for me to lay out this space to maximize my needs. But what we're really talking about today is how can we take what we've already been dealt, the hand we've been dealt, and make it work for us? And so that's what I've done in every home that I've ever had. I've made modifications and changes, but I've never personally myself gone through a gut renovation. And I can tell you that I have made every kitchen that I've lived in, from my studio apartment in Manhattan all the way to my home now and in between, work for me with the use of some creative configuration and some inexpensive products. So, um, again, there are some really good things about organizing the kitchen. So I want to just talk about that. So we know some of the limitations, but I also want to talk about three things, three reasons. Sorry, not if anyone's watching me, I had two fingers held up. Three, I can count. Three reasons why kitchens are a great place to start. So if you are in your organizing journey and you are thinking about, I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm really stressed about organizing the kitchen or decluttering the kitchen, I'm going to tell you why I think this is a great place to start. Well, first of all, like I said, there's a huge impact. You are going to really, really see it. Like sometimes if you organize, a closet or something, I mean, yes, you see it. I think anytime you organize a space, it is rewarding. But a guest room closet that you don't use on the day-to-day basis, like you feel great in the moment, but you're not really reaping the benefits on an ongoing basis. When you organize a kitchen and you get it to work for you, that is continued reinforcement. And you will see that ripple effect in a positive way, not just for yourself, but hopefully for the other people that share that space with you. So that is again that momentum that we talk about. Um there's limited for the most part in a kitchen, there's limited emotional clutter. And what do I mean by that? So, when we talk about the three types of clutter, we talk about the physical clutter, the stuff that you see. We talk about the emotional clutter, the fear or guilt that holds you back from getting rid of things. Then we talk about counter clutter, which is the procrastination, the guilt, the overwhelm, the time, all of that stuff. Kitchens, unless you're talking about, a bowl or something that was like your grandmother's that means something to you, by and large, the kitchens are pretty cut and dry. There are things with defined expiration dates so that you know if it's food and you haven't gone through it in a while. That's easy to pitch because the decisions are made for you. So when you remove emotional clutter, you remove a level of decision fatigue that so many of us face. And that is worth its weight in gold. So just knowing that if I am somebody that struggles with emotional clutter, and I can start in the kitchen and not have to worry about that playing in as it would maybe in a closet where clothing can have a lot of emotion attached to it. So, another thing about another reason why I think kitchens are a great place to start is because they do have defined zones and areas. Like you are dealing with, excuse me, an existing structure. So sometimes when we have too many choices of like we have a blank slate, we don't know where to go first because there's so many options. But if you've got 5 drawers, you know what are the items that have to go in a drawer, you need to figure out you have a defined space to work in. So it removes that decision-making process for you, which for people who struggle with purging and organizing, that can be really helpful. It's like giving you a guardrail. And I love that because you're saying, here are my choices. I've got to keep my utensils somewhere. These are my 5 options. Where does it make sense? And usually it's going to come down to one or two. So I think that's a great benefit to working in a kitchen. And again, I think I just covered all three, but I think I skipped. So we have immediate rewards, limited emotional clutter, and defined spaces. So there are 3 reasons why kitchens are a great place to start. So hopefully you're super jazzed up and like fired up about that. I want to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of purging, organizing, and practical, actionable tips for you to get going with your kitchen. So sit tight. Okay. So we're talking kitchens. And if you've read my book or heard me say it before, I'm going to say it again that clutter is really a symptom. It's not the root problem. And I see this over and over, specifically in kitchens. So if you think about that, where the clutter in your kitchen is coming from, it's usually coming from a few different things. It's coming from either you have too much stuff, right? You have too much stuff that doesn't fit into your space, or it's coming from a place that you don't have it really zoned properly, right? You don't have it, and by zoning, you don't have stuff in the right areas so that it's working in conjunction with you. It might be you set stuff up in a way that didn't really make sense for the way that you live, or you're in a rush and you just threw something in a drawer or a cabinet or whatever, or you didn't put it away at all. So I think, looking at how we're laying out our kitchen and what we have in it is really the first step. So, step one, okay, we're gonna talk about the process. Step one is identify whether or not your problems in the kitchen, your clutter problems are stemming from physical clutter, too much stuff, or primarily, again, like I said, you're probably not going to have too much emotional clutter, but calendar clutter can also be a big issue when it comes to organizing the kitchen, because if you are racing constantly, you don't have the time. And time is our biggest suck when it comes to calendar clutter. And in order to set up your kitchen to make sense for you, take some thought and take some unpacking of habits and how you live. But once that's done, it becomes really smooth sailing to maintain. Yes, you'll probably have to tweak things, but understanding, like, once we get this moving in a way that works for you, it should be pretty streamlined for everybody to maintain it. So that is the good news. So when you're thinking about your volume, are you somebody that likes to collect lots of things? Do you have multiples of a certain product? Now, that could be a disposable product. Like, I've got every spice under the world, but I really only use three on a regular basis. Am I somebody that collects or tends to have a 50,000 mixing bowls or cooking gadgets? Am I like a gadget person? I see that a lot. Every new gadget that comes out on the market. But really, like, how often are you using these gadgets? So when you think about where clutter in a kitchen comes from, and you look at those traditional like kitchen products, you think about where am I increasing these things? And that can fall easily into the like, oh, it's only a few dollars. It doesn't cost that much. I have a lot of this. I have volume of that, or I'm not cycling things out. So you start to think about, is volume my issue? The other thing that you want to think about is, do I have a poor layout? Am I not, again, we touched on this earlier, am I not having it make sense for me? Do I have my utensils clear across the room? So I have to have like a secondary canister on my cooktop, or on my counter. So think about the layout. Does the layout make sense? Do I have the stuff in the area that I need? The third thing is, do I have the right products? Sometimes with the kitchen, believe it or not, getting some simple drawer organizers or a pull-out, inexpensive like cabinet pull-out for like those back cabinets that like stuff gets lost in the back can make a huge difference. Or maybe you've got all kinds of like spices that are shoved in somewhere, and if you put them in a lazy Susan, that you can easily access them. So sometimes just some inexpensive products can really, really make a difference, both from an aesthetic to just make it look nicer, but also from an accessibility. How quickly can I go to retrieve it? So I think product can really make a big difference in your kitchen. And the amount you're going to spend on products is going to determine on how big your space is, what you need, what you want. It doesn't have to cost a fortune, but I've done kitchens where I've spent, $1,000 on products, but it doesn't have to. I think, again, you want to look at your habits, your needs. Are you somebody that wants that Pinterest perfect kitchen where everything is decanted and labeled? Or are you okay having all your cereals in a box as long as they're corralled in one general area? So only you can answer that. And so I think the other thing that we want to talk about is making sure that you're maximizing your space. And what I mean by that is I see so many times in a kitchen, people will take what I call prime real estate and they will use that for stuff that they use a few times a year, like some platters or a big, if you only use your crock pot seasonally, or certain things that are big and take up a lot of space that you could repurpose for something else. And so maybe finding a new home, rehoming, going back into which I'll talk about when we get back into our four piles, talking about how can we repurpose our space for maybe some of the other areas that are being neglected. And so when you think about again, specifically, is do I need a space for a homework hub for my kids? Do I need to utilize a drawer or a cabinet for their school supplies or office supplies or, you know, uh, whatever, a shredder to keep in my kitchen because that's where we sort our mail? I know in our home, when my kids were younger, they would do their homework at like our breakfast bar. And so I dedicated one drawer that was on the opposite side of our breakfast bar, which is one of those big oversized drawers for their school supplies. And I had everything and I still have it, even though they're grown, I still have it. It's got pens and pencils and erasers and scissors and glue sticks and index cards, and it's all organized. But that was like their central supply area. So if they needed stuff and they were doing their homework and had rulers, protractors, all that stuff, that was right there. And I had it in the kitchen because that was part of how our life functioned. So even though it wasn't probably designed originally with that in mind, that was a system that I created and it worked. And what I loved about it is because it was simple and because they knew where everything was, it empowered them to not ask me 50,000 times where a pencil was or where a stapler was or where the ruler was. They knew exactly where to go. And as a parent who answers 50 million questions all the time, that was super freeing. So think about what spaces can you repurpose for the other functions of your kitchen other than cooking. Okay. So that's all first step one. A lot of information. Step two, I want to talk about the whole fact of starting small, like how are we going to get into this? How are we going to roll up our sleeves and start to take action? So we want to do these things. We've kind of mapped out a plan of action. We know that we want to put, you know, our kitchen gadgets over here and our school stuff here and our baking supplies over here. And I mean, again, you could put post-it notes and like flag your different spaces if you're a visual person, you need to see that. But now it's time to actually dig in. How and where do you do that? And this is where people can get really tripped up and overwhelmed easily. One of the things that I talk about is starting small. And when I say starting small, it is for multiple reasons. First and foremost, I want you to be able to start and finish something in one session, in one time that you're doing it. So that is why if you start small, it is going to allow you to actually see that progress. And that progress is going to give you momentum and encouragement to go on to another space that might be a little bit bigger. So that's the first thing. You want to have that win under your belt. The second thing is it also it helps you when we start small, it helps us to really make sure that we're on the right path and that we're not going biting off more than we can chew at once. And I've made this analogy before and I'll make it again. And it has to do with running. So if you decide one day that you're going to start training for a half marathon or even a 5K, you're not just going to get up and say, I'm going to go run a 5K all at once. You're going to start by running a quarter of a mile. And then you're going to get that under your belt. And then you're going to go, okay, now I'm going to run a half a mile. And as you start to build that momentum, you are going to increase the amount you're going to be running, and you're going to take the same approach with your kitchen. And what I love about kitchens is it gives you that defined space. So you can start with, I just want to organize this cabinet first. I just want to organize this shelf first. I just want to organize the pantry now. So you can take it into specific stages and work through it. And again, if you bang out the first one in 20 minutes and you're feeling great and you've got the time, go for it. Move on. But if you're like, "You know what? I'm going to do this a little bit each day or each week or however you whatever system works with your schedule." I would rather you see long-term consistency than dive into a project head first and not be able to finish it. So I think that's really, really important because, again, the key is building sustainable momentum. That's the key. How do we do this now? So now this is where we're getting into the nuts and bolts of my organizing ESP, which stands for empty. We're going to empty that space. We're going to sort it. We're going to sort it into our four piles. And remember, our four piles, and we talked about this in our last episode, are keep, which is the stuff that we're going to keep in this spot, like in rotation now, not anywhere else, but we're keeping it. The second pile is donate, which is anything that it's in great condition. We're just not using it. We are going to donate it. That's a second pile. Then you have the third pile, which is your recycle pile. And that is anything that is broken, damaged, doesn't work anymore, expired. If we're talking about kitchens, that goes into trash slash recycle. That's your third pile. And then our fourth pile is our relocate pile. Relocate pile is stuff that we want to keep, but doesn't need to live there. Now, because kitchens are a defined space, you shouldn't have too much in your relocate pile, although you might have some, like I said, appliances that maybe are taking up a lot of space and you only use them a couple times a year. So those could relocate. But you're not really going to have you really shouldn't have much in memory like you would for in other spaces. So again, you may have stuff that are used infrequently that don't need to take up the real estate of a kitchen. But again, you also, when it comes to relocate, you want to be mindful when you're laying out your space of things that might want to relocate into the kitchen. So again, or need a home. So maybe it's been your kids' supplies have been sitting on the counter. Now we need to define a home. So we need to just kind of think about what's going to go there. But again, my goal is to get the keep pile to a manageable number, your recycle pile and your donate pile to be the two biggest piles. We want to get those anything that we're not using or is expired or damaged, get them out. And we want to get those piles out of there. So I think that's really, really important. And so that's where the P in the organizing ESP, that's the purging part of it. And so as we're doing that, we're removing it from the space. And once we go through that, then what we're left with is just this one keep pile to put back into rotation. And that is super manageable because your volume has been cut down significantly by having those other piles, the recycle, the relocate, and the donate pile. And then once you have your keep pile, the next step is to corral those like items together. And so you can get as detailed as you need to, but I would start with generic categories. So you're going to, like I said, you're going to have all your baking together. You're going to have all your pots and pans together. You're going to have your kitchen gadgets together. You're going to have grilling together. You're going to have, if you've got like kids' sippy cups or travel mugs, you'll have those together. So you're going to start to have those items like with like. And also, when you're talking about your food items in a pantry, or if you don't have a pantry and you have like dedicated cabinets in your space, what you're going to do there is you're going to start grouping food categories together. You'll have all your canned goods together. You'll have your kids' snacks together. You will have any type of, like I said, bottles or pastas. And again, you could do, breads, grains, however you want to set it up, depending on the type of food that you have in your house, you're going to just start creating those zones. And then that will also help you to determine where things can live. Because sometimes until you go through your organizing ESP and really truly see the volume that you're left with, you won't even know what the best space, meaning, oh, I thought I needed this really big shelf to house all the stuff or a really big drawer or cabinet. But once you thinned everything out, you're like, huh, I don't have as much as I thought I did. And so you can actually create space that you didn't even think you had. So that is the beauty of going through your organizing ESP. Step 6 is really all about making it simple and accessible. So again, we're zoning our like items together. You want to put things where people can easily reach them. If you've got little ones at home, put their cups and bowls and plates and drink cups, all the things where they can reach them. You want to make things flow with how your family flows. So you don't want to put something that you're going to access often on a really high shelf. I know that seems like common sense, but trust me, I've walked into many homes where there's, things that are used on a frequent basis. And every time you need them, you have to get on a step stool. And like, really, who wants to do that? That's just making more work for yourself. And then step 7 is about maintenance. It's about keeping up with it. And then the biggest question that I get asked, or one of the biggest questions, is how often? How often do I need to go through this? And it's really not a cut and dry answer. Kitchens, specifically, because it is an area that gets so much use, is going to need a level of ongoing maintenance. You're constantly going to want to be putting stuff away. You're going to constantly be wanting to check through an expiration date. As you pull something out, if it seems off or it looks like it's been there for a while, make sure you just check it and then you can purge it. But I guess my rule of thumb for people is if you want to do a deep dive once a year where you start pulling stuff out, you can do that. But even in my own house, I don't do deep dives a lot anymore. Maybe my pantry I will, but the rest of the cabinets, as long as it's working for me and I'm not bringing in a ton of new stuff. So, like my pots and pans are the same pots and pans that I've used for years. Occasionally, I'll have a frying pan that I bring in new because I cycled out an old one. So I don't really need a lot of maintenance for that. I'm not constantly buying you new utensils. So I don't really need to be doing a lot of maintenance in those areas. It's really the drawers and cabinets that have a lot of influx. Those are the ones that you're going to want to change and update and make sure, hey, am I still really using this? Maybe there was a season where you guys were using your Instapot like all the time, and now you're not using it so much. So maybe think about, okay, I'm going to relocate that to the basement or, somewhere else. Maybe you went through a juicing phase. And so you had your juicer out all the time. But you know what? That ship sailed. We've all done that. So it's okay. So looking at your habits and how they've changed, and then say, you know what? This doesn't need to live here. This space could really better be well served if I brought something else in here for this particular season. So just kind of periodically looking at that, I think is really important. But as long as you're being mindful of what you're bringing into the house and not over bringing in your volume, you're going to be in good shape. So again, before we go to our last break, just going to go over a couple of just real takeaways. First of all, work in manageable chunks, and that's going to depend on your bandwidth. If that's 15 minutes, if that's 30 minutes, if that's 2 hours, your bandwidth is going, your bandwidth. So that's going to play into how you work, and you have to just kind of go with that. Second of all, I don't want you, and this is one thing that we didn't really get too much into, but I want you to think about having a place, if you can, for backstock. If you are shopping in bulk, um, make sure that you have space to store it elsewhere. If you don't have that extra space, I highly recommend rethinking shopping in bulk, because again, the purpose of shopping in bulk is to not only help you hopefully save some money, but also to decrease the frequency that you need to go out and rebuy that product. So that saves you time. But if you don't have ample storage for it, then you're just trading for a different level of stress and clutter. So think about where you're storing your back stock. And then also with the kitchens, especially since there are it's used by multiple people, make sure that the systems that you're setting up work for everybody, not just for you. Again, if you have kids, you want to make sure that they're on board and that they know where everything is so that they can contribute. Same with a spouse, or if you have a parent at home, whatever it is, that or roommates, those are the things. Make sure that the other people are everyone's on the same page when it comes to where things live and how the kitchen is supposed to function. Okie doke. We're going to take one more break and we're going to come back and I am going to talk about products, my favorite products, my go to products, where you can go and get them. And so hang on, we'll be right back. Okay, so I know I gave you a ton of information here. Not to worry, it's all in our show notes. It's all detailed. You can find the show notes if you're listening to this podcast. You can find the show notes wherever on the podcast app, wherever that is. Or you can always head over to our podcast page on the blog, which is on the website, simply the letter B organized.com. Or you can head over to this organized life podcast and .com. Either one will take you there. And you can see links to everything or a detailed checklist of everything that I just rambled off to you. So if you want to come back to it, great thing. You can print it out. Now I want to talk about some of my favorite products. And I referenced this a little bit, but want to get into it. So, drawer organizers. Love drawer organizers. Um, there are different types of drawer organizers depending on your aesthetic. I tend to use those bamboo drawer organizers. You can buy them at Bed Bath and Beyond. You can buy them at the Container Store. You can buy them online at Amazon. I mean, you could pretty much get them anywhere. What I love about them is they come in multiple shapes and sizes, and it almost can appear if you jigsaw puzzle your drawer in a way that maximizes the space, it can look like a series of built-ins, so that things are corralled. And I love that. So what I normally do is just take a measurement of the inside of your drawer, not the outside, the inside, because you don't want to account for like the side. So the inside usable space, and then look at what am I storing there? Is do I need long storage? Do I need shorter storage? What do I need? And then you can play around with the different shapes and sizes. So I love bamboo, but there's also acrylic for people that like. There's also, if you want something more modern looking, you could get some wire type organizers. But again, it's all a matter of personal preference. The goal is to not have everything just dumped in as a jumbled mess. Specifically when it comes to kind of things like gadgets, kitchen gadgets that can just and junk drawers that can easily get out of control fast. Second product that I love are pull out storage, especially if you're looking at things like under a sink or in a large cabinet. So if your cabinetry is not designed with pullouts, and most updated kitchens nowadays will have some sort of pull-out storage. But if you live in an apartment and you rent, you don't want to put something in and like install it, or you can't put anything in and install it. There's a lot of just modular that you can just sit in it in your cabinet or in your space pullouts. And I've bought them. Again, my go-to places, and these are purely editorial. I'm not being compensated for this. Container Store, Bed Bath and Beyond. Amazon has as well. You could buy stuff online, but I like to be able to go and return them. So if it doesn't fit for whatever reason, so Target, Bed Bath and Beyond, like they're pretty lenient. They have pretty decent return policies. So if you try something and it doesn't work, you can easily return it because I don't want you stuck with product that you're not going to use. So pulling stuff out allows you to access the entire space and not just what's right in front of you. So you can easily see what's in back, and that's great. And I love pullouts for pantries as well. So anytime that you can have something that you can pull out, even if it's just a bin or basket, and well, that's basically my third product, that you can take out to see everything that you have. It's so much easier than just kind of thumbing through and seeing, trying to see what you have in a dark cabinet or pantry. So bins. I'm big on this huge acrylic bin kick. I've been on it for a while. I used to use white storage bins. It doesn't really matter. Again, it's personal preference. The goal is to corral your like items so that when you go to grab them, they're all in one place. I do this for kid snacks, and I've got bag snacks in one, I've got sweets in another. I also have a bin I'm trying to think of the bins in my closet. I've got one for like nuts and grains. I've got one for pasta. I've got ones for bread. Depending on where you're storing your stuff, I think that you're going to kind of look to see what it is. You could have, one for baking with cake mixes or whatever it is that you want. The other thing I love is, I mean, I love old school Tupperware. you know, I have decant all of my baking goods, sugar, white sugar, brown sugar, flour. I have my rice, all of those in airtight, protective, clear bins. This does a couple purposes. First of all, it aesthetically looks nice. Takes a little bit extra time because you have to decant the stuff, meaning take it out of what it came in and put it into this other container. But I think that's really, it looks nicer when you do it. And especially for like larger things like sugar and brown sugar, you're probably not going through them on the daily basis. So it's not like you're kind of refreshing it every day, but it also keeps it fresher longer. So you're not worrying about things going stale as quickly. You are also protecting it from any outside critters, whether that's mice or any type of insect or whatever. So it does, protect your food longer. So, and also it allows you to maximize your space because typically those types of storage containers are stackable. So, as opposed to just keeping your flour in the, 5 pound bag that it comes in, you can have, I have mine in like a rectangular lidded bin. And so I have flour. And then on top of that, I've got another bin with sugar. And so I can easily see it, grab it. So my ease of retrieval is a snap. And to me, that's what's most important. So I love that. And again, you can use whatever, there's so many different options on the market. I actually have old school Tupperware from back in the day, but there's tons of different options, different brands. It's personal preference. Again, my go-to places, Bed Bath& and Beyond, Target, Container Store. Those are my faves. So, those are some of my favorite products, that you can use. So love that. Any type of bin, basket. I like to mix bins and baskets. So I'll have, especially if you have a larger space. So if you have the luxury of having a walk-in pantry, do a mixture of some wire bins, do a mixture with some acrylic bins, do a mixture with a lined fabric bin for different things. And it gives it takes out the looking of it being so sterile and makes it more inviting. And it also makes it easy to identify where you're going and what you're looking for. So those are my go-to products and places to go. And again, you can always visit, like if you check out our Instagram feed, we have tons of pictures of kitchens before and afters, ones that we've done, ones that our partners have done, and lots and lots and lots of inspiration pics. And also our Pinterest page. Our Pinterest page is big for that. So definitely check that out. Okay. So where do we go from here? Want to wrap things up, talking about things that you could do. So if you are struggling with your kitchen, I encourage you to think about how you want to use it, what's working, what's not working, what would you like to have work, and just start making some lists. Go back, listen to this episode, write things down, check out some inspiration, see what works, and talk to the other people in your family so that everybody can get on the same page. We also, I'm hopeful that we're going to be start kicking off our live series, our live clutter clinics soon. So again, if you are interested in attending one of my live clutter clinic events, please shoot us a note right now. I'm just asking everybody, just email us info at simplybeorganized.com. That's info at simply the letter B like boy organize.com. Let me know and just put Clutter Clinic in the subject line. Let me know that you are interested in attending a live clutter clinic, and we will put you on a mailing list for any updates on upcoming events. So please make sure that you do that. And if you're a professional organizer, the other thing I want to say, if you're a professional organizer and you are listening to this and you're like, I have people that would like to do this. I have people that would be interested in learning more about the clutter, attending a clutter clinic, learning about these methods. We want to help other professional organizers deliver clutter clinics in their communities. So we have an entire clutter clinic curriculum. That is a hard thing to say. A clutter clinic curriculum for professional organizers so that you could give these tips and tricks in addition to your own custom tips and tricks to your people. So if you are interested, please email us. You can also use the info at Simply Be Organized and just put professional organizer clutter clinic or PO clutter clinic. Let us know. And we will send you information on that curriculum because that is something that we want to get in your hands so that you can serve your people. So that's it for today's episode. I am hopeful that this is inspiring you guys to tackle the kitchen, which is one of the most important rooms of the house, most used rooms in the house, and we want to see your progress. So tag us, tag your photos, would simply be organized, post your pics in this Organized Life podcast group, and we'll be cheering you on from the sidelines. Until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Oh, and make sure you tune in next week because we're going to be talking all about paper. Not as fun, but something that stresses everybody out. So we're going to be talking all about paper control. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye.